Today's topic is ML deployment and Azure. I believe all of you know that. We will try to leverage the Azure as much as possible because it's paid and it has some restrictions, but we will do as much as possible on that.
What's the agenda for today? So firstly, we'll talk about like what is Azure, right? So we'll be talking about like what is AI Foundry, right? Or Microsoft AI Foundry, right? So this is a very popular term, which is a hot topic in the market these days. Okay, and then we'll be taking one ML project, right? Then we'll be taking one ML project, and that we are going to deploy it on the Azure, right? And we are going to do the training part also on the Azure, right? So everything end to end on the Azure itself. Okay, so this is the thing which we are going to cover today. Okay, so for this session, the prerequisite is that you should have the basic understanding of the ML part, right? Machine learning part. So different algorithms, right? Like linear regression, logistic decision tree, and so on. So what is the pipeline of the machine learning? If that is, if you have the basic understanding of that, right? So then today you are going to see like how we can create the machine learning models on the cloud platform, which is the Azure. Okay, so now, when we talk about the cloud platforms, there are three different cloud platforms we have. One is the GCP, right? One is the Azure, and one is the AWS, right? So all are the three different platforms, and in all the three different platforms, we can create our own machine learning models, right? We can create our own deep learning models. We can create our own LLMs also. I mean, we can use the LLMs to create our own LLM-based applications. Okay. So when we talk about the Azure, right? So GCP is the product of Google, AWS is the product of Amazon, and Azure is the product of Microsoft. Okay. So it's paid. So if you're going to create the account, right? So initially it will give you like $150. Okay. So, but sometimes it gives you the error also while creating this thing. So here we have two things. One is the free, right? Which gives you very limited information. And second is pay as you go, right? Pay as you go in the sense whatever the features you will be using, right? According to that, you will get billed. Okay. Now, right. So today what we're going to discuss, right? So we're going to talk about the end-to-end Azure machine learning, right? A complete architectural workflow for training and deploying a housing price prediction model. Okay. So basically what we're going to do, we are going to take a machine learning project, right? Housing price. So where we will be predicting the price of the house depending on the different independent variables. Okay. So this is the problem statement which we are going to take. So the journey will be something like this. Firstly, we will be setting up our infrastructure, right? So when I say infrastructure setup, so that means what are the different things you need to create on the cloud platform, right? You need to create the workspace, you need to create the compute, right, on which you can run the clusters, right? You can upload the data, environment configurations, right, and all those things, right? So that is called as an infrastructure setup. Then second thing is then we are going to start training our model. Okay, so for that we'll be using the linear regression because our objective is not to learn the machine learning, but here our objective is that how to run the machine learning models or how to create the machine learning models on the cloud. Okay, so here we are going to use the linear regression. We are going to train it. We are going to see the accuracy part of it, and then the deployment part, right? So at the end, then we'll see like how we can register that model, right? So in case you have seen our previous master classes also, so like in the previous master classes we have taken some sessions on the AWS, right? We have taken on Databricks, right? So similarly here also we are going to do the same thing right, but on different platform. So we are going to register the model, then we are going to use the inference, right? We are going to create the endpoint for that. So endpoint will be used to predict the things, right? And using the API, right, it will create a REST API for us, and we can use that REST API either in our local systems, right, or in the cloud anywhere. Okay, so that is what it is written: provision resources, configure environments, and establish the development tooling. Then ingest the data, develop and train the machine learning model, and validate the performance, and so on. Okay, so this is what the foundational infrastructure hierarchy will look like. So when we talk about the cloud platforms, there are different components are there in this, right? So one is the Azure subscription. That is the very first thing. Okay, Azure subscription in the sense as I was telling you in the beginning. So once you will create your free account, right, it will give you very limited usage, right, hardly like $100 to $150, right, and that will also get exhausted very quickly. So, and also you will not be able to utilize all the features of this. Okay. So using the subscription, right, so we can take the full benefit of it, right? So that is the first thing. Then another thing here is storage account and the key vault, right? Storage account is like where you can put your files, right, keep your data and so on. Key vault, right? Key vault is where you can store your API keys, right? So some confidential information, basically that. Now compute, right? So now there are three things. One is the compute, one is the model, one is the endpoints, right? So which you are seeing on the top layer, right? Compute in the sense where you will be running your CPU or GPU, right? And the costing is different for everything, right? On the cloud, always remember whatever you are using for each thing, there will be the costing. If you are using 4 GB RAM, right, in the cloud, right, the costing will be like 0.3 dollars, right, per hour, right? If you are using 8 GB, if you are using 16 GB, the costing will be different. So here it will give us the options that which one you want to use, right? So that we can choose. Models, right? So here also you can create your notebooks, Jupyter notebooks, right, Python notebooks. And then the data part, right? So you have to store your data, import the data, and also so on. Then this is the endpoint in the sense once your model is built, right? Once your model is built, after that, what is the next step? The next step is that you are going to store that model, right, in the pickle file format, right? If you are aware about the machine learning, then you might be aware about that there is a pickle file format in which we store the model. So that is what we are going to store, and then based on that, it will do the predictions for us, right? So this is what it is written. Right, everything runs inside the subscription. The workspace is your localized command center for the project. So workspace in the sense for each project you can create the different workspaces, right, and so on. Okay, so this is how it will look like. Okay, so we are VM in the sense virtual machine, because in the cloud you will be creating your virtual machine. You are not going to do anything in your local system. So that means you need the CPU also, you need the GPU, you need the containers, right? And everything will be created using the VM. Okay, so for that, different options will come, and for each option there will be different costing involved, right? So we can choose based on our requirement, based on this thing. Okay, so Azure computes as your cloud hosted laptop, right? Running Jupyter natively within the workspace, right? Workspace, which I was telling you, we created in the previous step. In that, we can create a virtual machine. Okay, and in that, we'll be opening the Azure ML Studio, right? So now there are two things. One is the AI Foundry, right? One is the Azure ML Studio. So Azure ML Studio is used for creating the machine learning models and deploying the machine learning models, and AI Foundry, right? So there you can use the LLMs, right? So that is specifically for creating the GenAI based applications. Okay, so here you will be using the compute, right? And then you will be creating the compute instance, right? So this is how the screen will look like, and this is what we are going to take. Okay, so this is how your data set will look like, right? So on x-axis, or I would say x will be your all the independent variables, and y will be your dependent variable or the target variable. Okay, so square feet, bedrooms, bathrooms, and year built, right? So these are your independent, and price is your target variable. Okay, so then we are going to divide the data into the training and testing, 80% into the training and 20% into the testing. And this is the code, right? So if you're familiar with the machine learning, this code might be very familiar with you, right? Because almost in every project we use this code: x train, x test, y train, y test, and so on. Okay, so we are going to create the best fit line. Once the model is created, right? Once the model is created, then we are going to predict it also, right? Based on the independent variables, then we are going to predict it. So this manual test verifies the model's logic in the notebook's RAM before transitioning to a persistent cloud deployment. So what does that mean? That before pushing it, right, before pushing it into the production, right, we'll be testing it in our same Jupyter notebook, right? So what is the accuracy we are getting? So different data sets we can pass as the testing one. Okay, so then you can secure your artifacts also, right? Artifacts in the sense like if you are using the scaling techniques, then all your scalar files, right? Maybe standard scalar, min-max scalar, or anything. Or if you are using the job lib, or if you are using the model, right? So for that, either you can store it into the pickle file format, or the job lib, or any other file format, right? So mainly the pickle file formats are very popular, right? Mostly you store into this. Okay, so you register that model, right? So registering that model in the sense that you are making that model ready for the production. Okay, so model registry is version controlled, right? What do you mean by version controlled? In the machine learning domain, it's not like once you have deployed the model and that will run for years, right? You have to continuously keep on updating it with the latest data, right? So V1 version, V2 version, V3 version, right? So all those versions can also be stored here into the registry. Centralized storage for trained model files, ensuring they are preserved and deployable. Okay, so see, this is how the entire workflow will look like. Okay, so you'll be having the artifact, right? So where you'll be storing the file in the pickle file format, job lib, right? The logic, right? Where you'll be creating the score.py. Score.py will be used to predict for the prediction part, right? How much score the model is getting. Okay, and the conda.eml, right? So in the conda.eml, you will be writing all the uh, dependencies, right? So whether you are using the NumPy, pandas, because internally it will create a Docker container. Internally, it will create a Docker container, and in that, it will download all the dependencies, right? So for that, either you can explicitly give these things, right? Otherwise, it will create it by default. Okay, so generally it is recommended to give it by yourself, because if it is going to create it by default, then version mismatch issues might come, or it might not be able to put all the dependencies over here, right? So an endpoint cannot run on a model alone. It requires an execution script to handle the requests, right? And a configured environment to provide the necessary dependencies. Okay, so this is how the architecture will look like, right? So for the prediction part, the user will pass the JSON request, right? Basically the input variables, right? That will pass through the API gateway, right? So just like I was telling you, it will be creating a REST API, right? And that it will go, then it will go to the score.py, right? So score.py is something which we created earlier, right? See here, right? So where we are going to call the model, right? Housing model.joblib, right? So internet will call that, right? And from there it will predict. Okay, so this is how your workflow will look like, or this is how your pipeline will look like for the prediction part. Okay, so user will pass the request in the form of a JSON, right? So that will go as a API, right? That will hit the REST API. That will go inside the score.py. Score.py is calling internally the housing model, which is the actual model. Okay, so it will give you the value, the predicted value, and that will get printed to the user, right? So this is how it will look like. Okay, so these are some specifications, right? So model name will be something, right? So like in our case, housing model will be the name of the this, right? So environment, right? So environment in the sense like what are the different instances you want to give, right? And all those things. Code, right? Score.py and the compute part. Okay, now when we talk about the endpoints, right? In the endpoints also you have two types of endpoints. One is like real time and one is like batch, right? The difference is that when we talk about the real time, right, it will evaluate single record. Okay, so let's suppose if the user is asking anything, right, for the prediction, right, it will take care of those requests, right, as soon as they will come. And batch is used, right? So whenever you want to process multiple requests at the same time, right? Instead of processing a single request, if you want to process the request, multiple requests, right? So generally it runs once in a day, right? Or twice a day, right? So here we can do the scheduling that run it every day at 5 o'clock in the morning, or run it every day at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? So in this way, and we can schedule it twice a day also, thrice a day also, right? So those kind of things we can do. Okay, so what it will do, instead of asking for every time, right, it will be simply running it at the decided predefined timelines. But the real time endpoint is as soon as the request will come, it will start predicting. Okay, so that is the difference between the real time and batch endpoint. So we can use any, right? So the process will remain the same. There is no difference in the prediction part or in the process. Okay. Yeah, the only difference is in the real time, since one request is going, so that can go directly. But in the case of batch endpoint, you have to pass the CSV file over there, right? CSV or something else, right? So depending on whatever you want to pass, because here you are not going to pass single record, but you're going to pass the multiple records, right? So that thing, right? That is the difference. And this is how it will look like, right? So you are passing these four independent variables, right? So like the data set was square feet, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, and the year built, right? So this is the input data which is going to the model, and model will do the prediction that this should be the house price, right? Okay, so this is the regression based problem statement. Okay, so this is the entire pipeline end to end, right, which we are going to see. First one is that creating the Azure account, right, workspace, compute instance, Jupyter notebook, right? So this is the setup phase. Okay, so Azure account for doing the coding and everything, ML workspace, right? So for each project, you can create single workspace, compute instance, right? So where you will be defining your GPU, CPU, right, RAM, right, and all those specifications. Okay, and then Jupyter notebook where you will be writing the codes. Second phase will be that you need to train the model, right, and you need to upload the data and all those things, right, to testing the model locally. That will be the second phase. And the third phase will be deployment part. Okay, so in the deployment part we'll see like how we can store the model, right, how we can register the model, right, and how we can create the endpoints, right. In the endpoints, as I was telling you, there are two types of endpoints, right. So one is the real time, one is the batch, right. So we can create any one. Okay. Conda environment, right? Point number 111 is conda environment. So what the conda environment will do? So in this, since it will be creating internally the Docker container, right? So here we can give the instructions, right? That download this library, this library. So here it will be like requirements.txt, right? So where we'll be passing all the dependencies, right? I need the NumPy, pandas, matplotlib, whatever the libraries I want. Then deploy the model in the sense just whatever the model we have finalized, we can making it ready for the prediction part, right? And then test the live this thing. Okay, so this is the entire this thing. Okay, so now since this one is clear, okay, so now, right, now we have got little idea about this, right? So what is the process and what are the steps we are going to follow. Now, now let's jump to the implementation part, right? Now let's jump to the implementation part. Now for the implementation, right? What we have done, all right? So I already have created the project, right? Because if I'm going to show it here from the scratch, right, it will take like 2 to 3 hours, right? Even in creating a instance, right, it will take like 5 to 10 minutes just to create the instance, right? Because the things are little slow on the cloud platforms. Okay. So what I'll do, right? The project is already have created today, right? So I'll show you the steps. So in case you want to replicate it, you'll be able to replicate it easily. Okay. So just give me a second, right? So what I'll do, I'll firstly quickly show you the data set on which we are going to work. Okay, and then we'll move to the next steps. Okay. Okay. So now, okay, so I'll share my screen now. Okay. Now, if you will see, right, this is how the data set looks like, right? So this is the data set in which we have these four independent variables, and this is the target variable or the dependent variable, right? So this is my dependent variable, and these are my independent variables. Okay, so these are my independent variables. Okay, now the first thing is that we should have to create the account on the Azure, right? So this is the account, right? So when you click on the Azure, right, portal.azure.com, right? So this is how the homepage of your Azure will look like. So here, if you will see, right? So if I click on this, right? So you will get the different things, right? So if you click on these 9 dots, right? So you will see A Foundry, Azure, Copilot, right? So these are the different applications we have, which is in the Microsoft Cloud. Okay. And if you click on this, so here you will see all the different things like virtual machines, which we are going to create, right? Load balancers, right? So these are used to transfer the load or transfer the traffic, right, from one to another. Okay. Now here you will see this Azure machine learning, right? So this is used to create the machine learning models, right? So this is used to create the machine learning models. Okay. So when you click on this, the very first step, sorry. Okay. The very first step is that you have to create a workspace. Okay. So for each workspace, you will be having a different this thing, right? Project. So when you click on this, right here, you can click on the new workspace, right? For ML projects and teams. So when you click on this, right? So here you have to give the information, right? It will take like 8 to 10 minutes to create this workspace, right? So when you click this workspace, right? When you click on the review and create, it will take like 8 to 10 minutes to create it. Okay. Now, once it is created, right? So like I have given the name Microsoft, sorry, house price ML. This is the name I have given, right? So just open this. Okay. Now when we open this, okay, so after that, workspace will be created. That is the first step. Now the second step is now I have to start creating the models. Okay, so I have to start creating the models. So for that, what we'll do, right? We'll open a this link. Okay, so if I'll go here, okay, so when you will create the workspace, this is how the workspace will look like, right? Just like here, the workspace which we created here on the portal.azure.com, right? This house rise ML. So when you will open this link, ml.azure.com, right? So here it will start looking after 8 to 10 minutes, right? So once that workspace will be created, okay. So go inside it. So once you will go inside it, this is how the page will look like. Okay, so where you can create your generative AI models, right? Where you can create your machine learning models, right? So where you can do whatever you want to do. Okay. Now on the left hand side, if you will see, I have notebooks, right? Automated ML, designer, prompt flow, and different things. Now the important part here is first one is the notebooks. Notebooks are the Jupyter notebooks basically. Automated ML, right? So this is like the auto ML, so which will try out the different algorithms by itself, and it will give you the best accuracy. But the thing is, it is very slow, and it is very time consuming. Okay, so because it will try out all the permutations and combinations, and based on that, it will give you the output. And here, if you want to upload any data, right? So for that, we use the data, right? And the pipeline, if you want to create the end-to-end pipeline, for that we use it, and the environments. Okay. And this endpoint, right? If you remember, I was talking about that there are two things: real-time endpoints and the batch endpoints, right? So these are those endpoints. Okay. And compute, right? Compute, just like I was talking about, that you have to create the compute, right? Which will be having the CPU, GPU, right? Whatever you want to use, that one. Okay. Now, what is the first step now? After creating the workspace, what should be your next step? The next step is creating the compute part. So when you click on the compute, right, click on the new, right, and here you have to give the different things, right? So whether you want to use the CPU or whether you want to use the GPU, right? Let's suppose for our when the CPU is sufficient. Okay, so select from the recommended options. Right now, here if you will see, right, so based on your requirement you can choose, right? So if I'm choosing this, right, 14 GB RAM, 28 GB storage, right, so it will consume this much of costing, right? So per hour, so this much will cost this much, right? So depending on the problem statement, right, so we can choose anyone. Okay. Now now once you will right, so once you will create this, right, it will again take like 6 to 7 minutes to create it. Now, this is how it will look like, right? Just like I have created for my problem statement, right? So this is how it will look like. Okay, now the next step is, once you have done this, after that, next step is that we have to start importing the data and we have to start training the this thing. Okay, now here you will see, right, when you go to the notebooks. Okay, so now if you will see here, right, so here you will see the list of all the users, right? So when you work in the corporates, right, so it's not like you are the only one who will be working. So this is like my email ID, right? So in the same way, you will see the list of all the users here. Okay, so if you go inside it, right, so you can create all the Jupyter notebooks and whatever you want to create, right? Click on this, and here you will see create new file. Right, so when you click on the create new file, here you can give the extension, right, whatever the file you want to create, text file, bash file, R file, or whatever, right? So it will create the file for you. Okay, so let's suppose I have created the house price dot ipynb. But before that, firstly you have to upload the data also, right? So this is the housing price dot csv file. So basically this file, right? So I have to import this data also. So we are importing this data here, right? Again, how? Click on this and upload files, right? So when you will upload the file, so this housing data dot csv will look something like this, right? So we have imported this data. Now go into this, right? And here just uh, you can start using that compute, right? Now see, this was the compute which we just created. So we have activated it. Okay, so then import pandas as pd numpy, right? So I hope you are familiar with the coding part. So when you're going to run this, again, it will take like 3-4 minutes to get it executed, right? Because it is starting, right? In starting, it will take approximately 3-4 minutes. So then read.csv, right? So we are reading the file. This is how the data set will look like. We are dividing into the x and the y part. X, all the independent variables, and y, the dependent variable. Okay, and we are dividing into the training and testing. Okay, so we are dividing into 80 to 20% ratio. 80% into the training and 20% into the testing. Then creating the object for it, dot fit, right? And then house model.pkl, right? So we are dumping it, or we are saving this model, right? Because ultimately we are going to use this model for the prediction part. Okay, so let's see whether once it is done, right? So what is happening? It is starting the compute. Okay, so okay. Okay, so in the meantime, okay, so here what we are doing, we are storing the model, right? So whatever the model we have created, right, we are storing that model, saving that model, and this is used for the prediction part. Okay, so whatever the model we have created, right, so that model we are using it for the prediction part, right? Model.predict and this one. Okay, obviously, if you need to see the accuracy metrics, right? If I want to calculate the R square, adjusted R square, MSC, RMSC, right? So all those things can be tested here because this is nothing. This is your Jupyter notebook only, right? So whatever the coding you want to do, right? You can do the coding here. So once you will run this, right? So this house model.pkl, right? So that will start appearing here, right? So this is the pkl file which will be stored. Okay. Okay. So now once this is done, right? So in the score.py, now, this is used for the prediction part. Okay, so this is used for the prediction part because when you are going to deploy it, right? When you are going to deploy it, right? So we have to use it for the prediction also, and this file will be used for the prediction part. So what we are doing, importing pandas pd joblib, this one. So in this, what we are giving the command that load the model, right? So whatever the model we have created, just load it. Which model? House price model, right? Because the name of the model which we have given here is house price model. Okay, load that and mini batch, right? So we are going to deploy it on the mini batch, right? Obviously, you can do the real time also, and you can do the batch also, right? So we are seeing the batch part. So pd.read csv mini batch. Okay, so because for the testing, I need to give multiple records, as I was telling you. If you are using the batch, then it is going to the predict, and then the output will be stored, right? Then the output will be stored. Okay. Now see here, right? Now compute is in the active state. Okay, so now you can run the codes, right? Now see, this is how it will run, right? In the in the this one. Okay, so model is not defined, right? So let's run this. Okay, so it is doing the prediction part. Now what we have done, right? I'll repeat the steps. So what we have done, the first step is, right, that we have, after creating the account on the Azure, right, the first step which we have done is that we have created the workspace. Create workspace. The second step what we have done is create the compute, right? This is the second step which we have done. Third step is that we have import the data, import the training data, right? This is the third step which we have done. Fourth step is that in the Jupyter notebook, right, we have trained the model, trained and saved the model, right, in PKL file format, right, in PKL file format, right? This is the next step which we have done. Now model is done, model is created. Now fifth step, the fifth step is then we have to create the score.py file, right? So why it is required? Because once we are going to push it on the endpoint, right, at that point we would be needing this to create for the prediction part. Okay, so this is going to load the model, right? This is going to load the model which we have saved here, and then it is going to pass those testing values into this model. Okay, so these are the steps which we have done till now. Okay, now what is the next step? So the next step is, once the model is done, once the model is stored, okay, then we have to register that model, right? Because in this you will be doing multiple experiments, right? You might be creating model 1, model 2, model 3, model 5, different models you'll be creating. Then which is the model you want to take it to the production, right? You are going to register that model. Okay, so for that what you will do, go to the models here, right? So here you will go to the models, right? And here you will see that you will start seeing that model here. Okay, so this is the model which is registered. Okay, so whatever the model you are going to save over there, so that model will start appearing here. Okay, so you have to use this model for the prediction part. Okay, and here you can see the versions also, right? Artifacts, right? This house model.pkl which we created, right? And so on, right? Endpoints and so on. Okay, now once this is done, right? Once this is done, after that what is the next step? The next step is creating the environment, right? Creating the environment. Either you can create the environment here, right? Either you can create the environment here, right? So there are two types of environments. One is the curated, one is the custom. Curated in the sense which are already there, right? So here if you will see, these are the predefined. Okay, predefined environments. Custom in the sense which we can create by ourselves, right? So like these were the different environments, right, which we have created. So we can create our own environment. Okay, so if you will see here, this is the conda file I was talking about, right? So where you have to give all the dependencies that I'm going to use the sklearn, I'm going to use the anaconda, I'm going to use the Python version 3.10, setup tools, wheel, pandas version, this, scipy, numpy, right? Scikit-learn, this one, right? So here you are going to give all the dependencies which are required to run in this model. Okay, so this is what you give over here in the environment. Now, what is the environment? New environment version 4, right? So here also you can create different versions, right? Version 3, version 2, whichever you want to use, you can do that. Okay, so I'll write it here. Now the sixth step is that you are going to register this model, right? Why we are going to register the model? Because there will be different versions. So which version I want to take it to the production? That one. After that, create the environment, right? Why it is required? Because in that we have to define the conda YAML file, right? That which are the libraries which will be required. It will be creating the Docker container inside it, right? So Docker container, in that all the different libraries and everything will get done, right? So here if you're getting succeeded, that means it's successful. Otherwise you will get the failed here, right? Failed, and then it will be a cross button here, right? So that means something is wrong. Okay, And if you will see here, so this is the Docker image. Okay, so this is the Docker image which will be created automatically. Once this is done, once this is done, okay, then what is the next step? Then the next step is that you can create an endpoint. Okay, so I was telling you that there are multiple types of endpoints. Either you can use the real time or the batch endpoint. Okay, so this is the batch endpoint, right, which will be taking the input in the batches, right? And this is the real time, right, which will be taking one instance at a time. Okay, so if I'll talk about the batch endpoint, okay, so how you'll be creating it: create, add model deployment, and here you just keep on giving the information. Okay, so let's suppose I'm giving here final underscore v1, right? So not this one, right? So hyphen v1. All right, so here no information is required. Click on next. Right now, see here. So it is saying that which model you want to deploy. All right, so I'm saying that this model, right, which we just created. Right, so click on next, and it will ask you for the different information. Right, so deployment name, let's suppose we give this. Output action, whether you want to summarize it or whether you want to append the rows. So means when you're going to do the prediction based on that, right, so obviously you will be passing multiple rows, right? So that is what it is asking. Okay, output file name, what will be the file on which the predictions will happen? Predictions.csv. Mini batch size, right? So let's give here 2 or 3, right? So how many records it will take, right? And keep the things other by default, right? Click on next. Okay, so here you will be giving the scoring script, right? What is the scoring script? That file uh, which we created, no? That score.py, right? So that you're going to upload it here, and then just click on the next, right? It will take again 8 to 10 minutes, right? Again it will take like 8 to 10 minutes to create this one. So once this will be created, right, it will look something like this, right? This will look something like this. Okay, so here you will see succeeded, and here you will see succeeded message, right? So if you are getting this succeeded message, that means it is successful. And this is your API, REST API key. Okay, so this is your REST API, which you can use anywhere for the prediction part, right? So you can share it with the stakeholders, not stakeholders, but I would say the UI team, right? And they can create the UI, right? Otherwise, if you want to deploy it on the Streamlit, so then you can deploy it on the Streamlit also. Okay. Now, one more thing that needs to be done here is that when you want to do the prediction, as I was telling you, that you have to pass the data, right? So either you can pass it manually, otherwise you can create a data set also here, right? See here on the left hand side, this is the data. So click on this data, right? So click on the create, okay, and here you can put the data, right? Let's suppose I'm giving test1 data, right? And give the URI file only, right? So click on next, right? From local files, next, right? Let's take the blob storage only, next, right? And from here you can upload the file, right? From here you can upload the CSV file, right? Excel file, right? So whatever the file you want to connect. Okay, so once you will connect that file, right, again it will take some time, approximately 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, so if you will open it, right, so data will start populating here, right? So this is the data set link. Okay, so which can be used for the testing part. Okay, so this is the entire URI, right, which will be required, which we can pass anywhere. Okay, and if you want to run it in the code, so this is how you can import it into the code also. So that means, right, after creating the environment, right, once your environment is created, right, then you will be creating the endpoint, right? Then you will be creating the endpoint. Okay, after creating the endpoint, right, so what is the next step after creating the endpoint, right? So here you are going to create the batch endpoint, right? So after creating this endpoint, all right, then you will be uploading the, right, so it will create a REST API, right? And 10th part is then you can do the prediction part, right, by uploading the data. Okay, so this is your end-to-end flow for creating the application, guys. Okay, so starting from the model, starting from the uh, workspace creation part, right? So we have started from the workspace creation, right? And if anyone will ask you like which tool, on which tool, we do it on the ML Studio, right? This is the Azure ML Studio, okay? So on which we are doing it. So starting from creating the workspace till the creating the deployment part, right? On the batch endpoint, right? So we have seen the entire pipeline. Okay, so this is how you will be doing it, right? And obviously there are so many other features you can do, right? So you can create the feature stores also, right? So if there are repetitive models, right? So for that we can create the this one. Okay, so there are so many things basically which we can do here. Okay, but yeah, this is how it was, guys.